You're probably sitting there scrolling through endless listings, wondering if you should drop a good chunk of cash on a pre-built gaming PC or keep tinkering with parts that never quite click together. The fear of ending up with a machine that chokes on the newest titles, or that looks great on paper but turns into a noisy, cramped desk monster, is real. I get that hesitation, because I've been on both sides of the decision, building from scratch and buying a ready-to-play box. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The msi Codex R2 tries to sit in that sweet spot where you get the convenience of a pre-built system but still retain a bit of the DIY spirit. It ships with an Intel Core i5-14400F and an RTX 4060, paired with 16GB of DDR5 and a 1TB NVMe SSD. Those are the headline numbers, but what really matters is how they translate into everyday gaming sessions and the other tasks you'll throw at the box. First off, let's talk about the actual experience of pulling this thing out of the box and getting it on a desk. MSI kept the chassis deliberately simple, a clean, matte front panel with subtle lighting that you can crank up if you like a little ambience. The design isn't flashy, which means it blends in whether you have a dedicated gaming nook or a cramped bedroom setup. The "Turn on the bright lights" slogan feels more like an optional mood setter than a mandatory feature, and that's a plus for people who don't want a neon lighthouse staring at them at 3 a.m. When you fire it up, the first thing you notice is how quickly Windows 11 Home loads from that 1TB SSD. Even with a fresh install of a modern title like Elden Ring, you're looking at sub 1 minute load times, which is a noticeable improvement over older HDD-based builds. The RTX 4060 handles 1080p and 1440p gaming comfortably. You'll be hitting 60+ frames in most AAA titles with medium to high settings, and you can push to ultra in less demanding games without a hiccup. That's the beyond fast promise in action. It's not about breaking records, but about delivering a smooth, consistent experience that lets you focus on the game rather than the frame rate counter. One practical strength that shows up in real life is the thermal performance. MSI equipped the Codex R2 with a fairly generous airflow layout and an 80+ gold certified PSU that runs quietly under load. In my own testing, I ran a 3-hour marathon in Fortnite with the graphics set to 144Hz, and the fans stayed in a low hum range. The system didn't heat up the room, and the components stayed within safe temperature thresholds. For anyone who lives in a small apartment or shares a workspace, that quiet operation is a genuine win. Now, the DIY-friendly claim is something worth unpacking. The chassis opens up with a couple of thumbscrews, exposing the motherboard, GPU, and storage bays. If you're the sort of person who likes to swap out a drive, add more RAM, or eventually upgrade to a higher-tier GPU, the layout won't get in your way. The power supply is modular enough to keep cable clutter down, which also helps with airflow. That said, the case isn't massive, it's a mid-tower, so you won't be able to drop a massive 3080 class GPU in there without checking dimensions carefully. If you already have your eye on a future upgrade that's larger than the RTX 4060, you might hit a physical limitation sooner than you expect. Speaking of upgrades, the 16GB of DDR5 is sufficient for today's games, but you'll start to feel it in memory-heavy scenarios, like heavy multitasking while streaming, or running virtual machines alongside a game. The board does support a second stick, so you can bump to 32GB down the line, but that extra RAM isn't cheap. If you're planning on streaming your gameplay on Twitch or YouTube while you play, consider budgeting for that future RAM upgrade now. Another practical weakness is the lack of a built-in optical drive. While most people have moved to digital installs, you may still have a few physical disks lying around. Adding an external USB-C optical drive is possible, but it's an extra piece of hardware you'll need to keep handy. It's not a deal breaker for most, but it's something to note if you're transitioning from a classic console-style setup. The Wi-Fi 6 module included means you can go wireless without sacrificing too much bandwidth, which is handy if you can't run an Ethernet cable to your desk. In a quick speed test on a 5 GHz network, I saw stable 200 megabits per second throughput, enough for a smooth online experience in fast-paced shooters. That said, if you're a competitive gamer who swears by wired connections, you'll still want to plug directly into the router for the lowest latency. So, who should actually buy this machine? If you're a gamer who wants a solid 1080p or 1440p experience right out of the gate, without the hassle of hunting down compatible parts, the Codex R2 hits the mark. It's also